Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, and my beautiful donuts and munchkins, we are back with another episode of Eat the Donut. And today I bring on a very special guest, a fellow East Coaster turned West Coaster, but now back to the East Coaster. We won't talk about that. But a man you can find either spending all of his time helping people, helping individuals, speaking to groups to become their highest performing versions of themselves, or maybe even hammering away on the beach volleyball court. He is truly one of the hardest working individuals I know, one of the kindest and most down to earth humans you'll ever meet, and honestly, the analogy king of the world, which that's what I'm most excited for today is all these analogies that are about to come our way. But please welcome not only an incredible coach, an incredible speaker, and an incredible author, but my fellow mom walking partner and very, very good friend. And actually, Brett, I don't know if you know this, but like my very, very first friend I ever made when I moved to San Diego. But Brett Eaton, welcome to the podcast.
Kevin, my man, dude, this is so fun. Thank you for having me on. I appreciate that. I miss you so much being
I
back on
know.
the East Coast. But man, I love that you said the mom walks. We used to, for those people who don't know, Kevin and I used to meet up, walk down the boardwalk, and just chat. Like all the stuff. We would chat business, we would chat life, we'd chat
Yeah.
relationships. It was great. So here we are across the country doing a little mom walk together.
Dude, so great. I really appreciate you coming on this. And I really wanted to even like tell briefly the story of how we first met because we had a mutual friend
Yeah.
who she introduced me about you, saying like, "Oh, I have this friend who lives in San Diego. He's also a coach and all these things." And when me and my wife Shannon first moved here, I was just like, "All right, do I go on Tinder and find friends? Like, how do I make this work?" But anyways, I slid into Brett's DMs. I was like, "Hey man, here you're a coach. Love your content that you're already producing. Feel like we're pretty like-minded, but let's go meet for a coffee." And eventually we met. And this is the funny part where for me, I married my high school sweetheart, so dating for me is like super scary if I ever had to think about getting back in that field. So after we met, I was so nervous. I'm like, am I gonna get a second date? Like, is this gonna happen? Like, what's gonna go on here? I really like this guy. What's gonna happen?
That's so great. I think that women don't feel that. Women are like, oh my God, let's meet up tomorrow. Let's call each other. Let's do this. But guys are that way. Like, man, like Kevin was cool. Like, when's too soon to call him? Like, call him tomorrow. Is he gonna think I'm weird? He's probably gonna think I'm weird. Okay, I'll call him 2 days. Should we go for a workout? Yeah, let's go for a workout. That's not too weird. But no, I felt the same thing. I was just coming out of a relationship at the time.
Mhm.
You moved there, but then we connected. Obviously, like I think something about being in San Diego, but being from the East Coast, we just had so much, like our upbringing was the same. We had so much to relate on. And then obviously going through, the fitness space and then into coaching and all that. And we'll probably get into that,
Yeah.
later on. But it was, yeah, we had a lot to talk about, man. It was great. It was great I'm glad we did.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Well, let's get into things. So, Brett, just tell us a little bit about who you are, and you can take that question. I know it's a very open-ended question, but take it however you want. Like, start from the beginning, start from wherever you want. But who are you?
Yeah, born and raised New Jersey. Went to college in Virginia, and then kind of made my way like back to DC, and then kind of went out to California for a little bit. And I spent the first 8 years of my career in the fitness field. I actually went to school for exercise science, so I always say I'm probably one of the few people who went to school for exactly what they got into. And I loved it. I loved everything about the fitness space. It was just the first place where I not only felt like I had the right natural ability to inspire and motivate people and to be a really good coach and trainer, but I also just loved the environment. I loved being around, positive people, being a place where people were coming to grow, coming to learn,
Hmm.
coming to better themselves. Honestly, like for anybody who's ever been a personal trainer out there in the past, you know that there's a lot of speaking that goes on as a personal trainer.
Yeah.
You're having conversations, you're learning, you're trying to learn what makes somebody tick, what trips them up, what motivates them, what demotivates them. So that was kind of my first career. And then I transitioned into coaching, where I really wanted to start my own business. So I started coaching, which started off as fitness coaching. And then really I started kind of looking at it in kind of the 360 view of somebody's life. And then pretty soon after that became high performance coaching, which is really just a fancy word of saying like, how can we, optimize and maximize, what the skills that we have and get the most out of our day and out of really our life and the goals that we're pursuing. And then that turned into, speaking some on the side, which I didn't even know speaking was an actual career. It was just my clients would bring me in, come speak to my team, come speak at this, kickoff we're having. And then I totally learned that there was an entire business of speaking that I started to take seriously a couple years ago. And now I can officially call myself an author. So that's where we
I
are
love
today.
that. And I can't wait to get into your book. I mean, I personally just love the title. When we first met, actually, I think we went on a mom's walk a year ago when you were visiting San Diego and you were telling me about it. And I'm like, that is the perfect title, but we'll get into that. We'll let them make sure they stay for a bit so they can hear the title and we'll talk all about that. But how did your own journey with making change from who you were or like who you used to be to who you are today begin?
Yeah, I think it comes down to when we start to feel stagnant in our life. And I think that there's two reasons why people become stagnant. One is their routine has turned into a rut. And I know you talk about that often where we're just kind of doing the same thing, but honestly, it's more that we're just the energy isn't there. What
Mm,
we're doing no longer gives us energy, and we are no longer putting in really good energy to make this thing fun or exciting anymore. And the other thing is, I think when we hit, and I see this a lot with people who either start their own business or
yeah.
entrepreneur minded, is that they are outgrowing or looking to grow faster than their current role is allowing them to.
Mm,
And I think that itch is why a lot of entrepreneurs like need to scratch. It's I need to grow. I want to grow faster than this. I want to learn faster. I want to learn new skills faster. I want to grow faster. I want to make decisions quicker than the current role that maybe I'm in, whether it's a 9 to 5 or whether you're working for a company that they'll allow. So that's why you start to kind of drift to, hey, how can I do this on my own, or how can I do it in a more fast paced? But I would say that for me, it was I had felt like I had kind of tapped everything I could personally in the fitness field, and I just really wanted to challenge myself. I knew that I wanted to help people on a broader scale. I just didn't really know how to. So I
mm,
took personal training clients and actually I I started meeting them one extra session a week, and I called them 23-hour sessions. And
yeah.
basically we would look at the other 23 hours of their life. Somebody once said, "Did you meet with them for 23 hours?" I was like, "No, no, no. We looked at the other 23 hours of their life." It was a
Yeah.
good question, but and I started to really put the whole puzzle together. And I love that. I all of
Hmm.
a sudden I realized how much I love figuring out the puzzle of a human being and what makes us
Yeah.
work and what, how much of that is from the way we were brought up, how much of
Yeah.
that is how we're wired, how much of that is what attracts, what we're attracted to.
Yeah.
So I started to really figure out, hey, if we connect these dots and we have a better morning routine and we maybe consume some better content or consume some better things on the side or, fix our evening routine, all of a sudden the fitness thing becomes just a piece of the puzzle, and it's a lot easier to fit that in when we've now configured the rest of the puzzle.
Yeah. Well said. And I remember when we were talking once before and how I even got into coaching more online and why I liked it is because with an individual, that's like in-person training, you see them 1 to maybe 3 hours a week. And then there's a whole bunch of time that's happening that you don't see them. And it's not like you don't talk to them about that or anything, but for me, with specifically, the listeners in my clientele, it's specifically weight loss. Like obviously with that, that's the goal, but there's so much internal work that has to be done and routine work, I call it foundational work, that like you said, like whether it comes from habits that you grew up with or coping mechanisms, protecting mechanisms, whatever they were, where they maybe don't suit you anymore, that's maybe the stuff we have to actually dive into. So it's like rather than seeing you 1 to 3 hours a week and talking those 1 to 3 hours, let's look at the week as a whole. I want to be available to you as much as I can so we can strategize for all the other stuff on the outside. So being able to look at the whole 24 hours of a day each day, I think can make a huge, probably bigger impact for these individuals. Now, you've worked with, I think it's like thousands of high performers at this point, I'm sure. What patterns do you see the most in people who either don't have it together or even look like they have it together, but they're still struggling? Is there any like common pattern or patterns you see?
Yes, there's a couple things. There's the first one is the ability to make a phrase that I've coined QDQ, which is
Okay.
quality decisions quickly.
Okay.
And decision making is a huge factor in not just momentum, but confidence. And we'll talk about confidence as we go. But the ability to make decisions and move yourself forward. And there's a lot of people who have the best intentions, great ideas, are maybe even sitting on, $1 million ideas, but they're just not able to get out of their own way because they overthink everything. And
Hmm.
they have two good choices. So rather than making a good choice, they make no choice. And all of a sudden now they're kind of spinning their wheels. And that's what usually I've seen is why does it feel like two people have the same potential, but one of them is just flying forward and the other one feels like they can't get their, can't get traction. So the decision making process is important. And I feel like being able to make decisions is a really big part of that. The other thing is
Hmm.
clarity around what you want and really why you want it. And there's a great book by Simon Sinek called Start with Why, and he talks all about like the importance of knowing what your North Star is. And I think a lot of people get caught up in all the things that they want. But if I were to touch on all the things that they say they want more money, they want this, they want, if I were to ask them why, a lot of people don't have a really good answer or something doesn't come to their mind very quickly.
Hmm.
That is actually the thing that gets you out of bed is the
Yeah.
why. It's the
Yeah.
thing that is when it's, we talked about the mundane of just like, fitness or anything worth having that is just going to be repetitive. You are going to need a bag full of whys, like
Yeah.
a pack full of whys, because the same thing isn't going to work. I mean, just
Yeah.
to this week alone, it's Thursday. And one day I woke up because I just wanted to look good, at the trip we're taking to the beach. The
Yeah.
second day was like, I want to live for a long time. The next one is because I'm going to become a father and like, I want to, be an alpha dad.
Yeah.
Like you need a different why every morning sometimes.
Sure.
So I think when it comes to high performance is like we spend a lot of time on clarity, and I would recommend somebody rather than you can overplan, of course, but like get really clear on what you want and why you want it, and make sure that it's what you want, not what somebody else wants.
Yeah, and that makes a good point with talking about finding your why as far as having like multiple whys because it could be as simple as I really want to get a six pack one day. Like today that's my why because I'm really striving for that. I had a client who the way I typically, which I want to hear how even you talk about finding someone's why, because I know it can be a challenge for some individuals, and it takes some thought and actual some thinking behind it. But remember talking to this individual, and I gave him more or less like the five whys, of as far as, hey, like why do you need to lose, 100 pounds? Oh, I just want to be in shape. I want to have, look leaner, look better. Okay, why is that important to you? And eventually, after I think it was like three or four whys, it was, and he's an older gentleman. He's like, I've been overweight for most of my life. I had kids. I wasn't able to do activities with them. But now my kids are starting to have kids, and I don't want to be the grandfather who just sits on the couch and hangs out with them. I'm like, motherfucker, like, that's what's going to wake you up in the morning. You know what I mean? Like, we just got really deep because now there's more of a purpose of like an outcome goal that will help fulfill your life forever. But I want to hear more about like how you find individuals wise.
I love that story because we think that goals are often like a Disney movie where like paint the beautiful reward and
Yeah.
it's going to motivate us all the time. And
Hmm.
in the book, I talk about the fact that consequences are a much bigger motivating factor for people than rewards. I'd love it to be the other way around,
Hmm.
but it's usually not. And you can, the six pack, right? The six pack is a great thing and it's a great reward, but like there's a lot of work on all sides that go into having a six pack, right? There have
Hmm.
been times in my life where I've had one, there have been times in my life where I haven't. And it usually comes down to the seven different things
Yeah.
that I was either doing or not doing. And, but the consequence of, in that perfect example that you gave, the consequence is not being able to do something that he really wants to do. Now, it's
Hmm.
not easy to admit that. I love that you said the five why exercise because for some people it's you can get there in three whys. For some people, it may take 25 whys.
Sure.
You just have to get to the point, and really, it's how quickly can you be honest with yourself? How
Hmm.
quickly can you be brutally honest about what it is that you really want? Let me give you another example. I have a buddy who's been overweight for a while, and he was has kind of always been the guy that, messages me and, hey, I'm trying to do this and wants to, a lot of questions on weight loss. How do I do this? What is this? But he's never been able to stick with it. And it was a couple years back, but he actually was at a picnic with his entire family and sat on like, typical plastic lawn chair, and it broke. And he was embarrassed in front of his entire family, in front of his kids, and his I think his daughter came up and even said something of like, Daddy, you're too big for that chair or something, really innocent. But that was the moment he was like, I don't want to be like the big boy joke in front of my kids. Like,
Yeah.
I don't want to be the big heavy dad that is like breaking chairs. Like that was
Hmm.
just like it embarrassed him so much that was the catalyst for, hey, I'm going to start being consistent with this. So I think consequences, and sometimes even being like so fed up, so frustrated, so embarrassed, so mad, so angry, like sometimes those emotions can actually be a better catalyst than like, I'm going to do it because I'm super happy today. Like
Yeah.
that's not an everyday thing.
No, we're humans. We're faced with all emotions as we are supposed to. So it's those days, which I know again we'll get into this in a bit, but like those days where that internal motivational drive isn't there. It's we gotta find something. Yeah, some days feel effortless, but some days it's a grind, man. But like we have to figure out a way to still. Dan John says this best, but he always says, find a way to keep the goal the goal. Like find a way to keep the goal the goal. But Brett, I want to get into your book a little bit. So you've got a new book, right? Uncomfortable Either Way. I love that title. What inspired you to write that for your title and as your book?
Yeah, so the book itself is actually a pretty fun. Like I'm one of those people that when I first started my business, believe it or not, I would spend, and I knew that I had to make some changes, and we can go way back there, but the
Yeah.
the short story is I knew I had to stop going out and partying as much, and I really needed to put some extra time into this like new life that I really wanted to build for myself.
Hmm.
So Friday nights, what I started to do is I started to go to the public library, and that's where I would spend Friday night with myself working on my business, working on the finances, working on getting clients, working on creating content, working on starting to build a brand. And I would be in the public library until it closed at like 8 p.m. And I remember just being real for the first time, like I had been in libraries before, but it was the first time I started kind of looking around. And I started getting really inspired by authors. Now, funny thing is, like, it would depend on the mood that I was in. If I was in like a really good mood, I'd look around and I'd be like, wow, like that person, like, Steve Johnson wrote a book, and like Sally, Williams wrote that book. And it's like, man, this is great. Like, there's so many books in a library. And if I was in like a not so good mood or business wasn't going well, I was like, that guy wrote a book on nails. Like, come on, that guy wrote a book on like painting. Like, who are these people? So I would joke, like, depending on what it was, but I always felt like that would be a really cool thing to be able to do. And I knew, I was not a great student, wasn't a great writer, certainly wasn't, I'm not a fast reader. So it was a little bit outside of my comfort zone, but I opened my phone one day and there was this post and it said, like, if you knew you only had 1 year left to live, what would your regrets be? And then the second slide or whatever was, make sure you make changes based upon what your answer to that was. And I actually felt like very weirdly at peace with my personal life. And I feel like I've been a good friend. I feel like I've tried to have a great impact on my family and the people that care about me and all that. And then I thought about my professional career and also felt very proud there. But the one thing that I was like, if I had 1 year, I would probably be a little disappointed that I had never written this book that I had thought was inside of me.
Hmm.
And weirdly enough, it was like that's all it took for that to become a priority the next year. I moved some things around and I was like, you know what? I'm going to prioritize this book. And there had been a lot of writing in the book. There's a document from 2018 that I remember starting. And weirdly enough, Kevin, I started it on my birthday. So something
Wow.
about that date made me like probably reflect on my life and maybe say like, hey, there's got to be a book in here. And I just had this document of like 115 Google document pages of notes and paragraphs and chapters and ideas and quotes and things that I have said for a long time. So that's really what we started working on. But I knew that that was actually one of those areas that would never happen if I didn't drastically increase my accountability. So
Hmm.
I found a hybrid publisher where I give them a big check up front and they supply me with the team and they help me, they put up a writing coach with me and we start to like really craft the book together and they help me through the process. So it wasn't one of these, amazing things where they pay Brett to write the book and do this. No, no, no,
Yeah.
kind of back ways. But I knew that once I did that, it was like, hey, now it's real. Like now
Yeah.
there's a timeline. Now I'm working with somebody, and I'm certainly not going to waste all this money. So that was really kind of how we got there. And the title was just this feeling that I had where every big moment of my life and every kind of fork in the road, call it, from who I was to where I wanted to be or any goal that I wanted to accomplish, I always felt like the change or the leap of faith or the bold decision was going to be uncomfortable. And a lot of people say that change is uncomfortable. And my whole message of the book is you're damn right it's going to be uncomfortable. But you're also uncomfortable now anyway, knowing that there's this change out there that you're refusing to make, knowing that there's a bold decision that you keep putting off, knowing that there's this thing inside of you that maybe you're not exploring or this passion that you're continuing to let kind of go to waste. That's also really uncomfortable. So that's kind of the title. And funny enough, they didn't like it in the beginning. And it was
Wow.
thing that I fought for. And we came up with probably, no joke, probably 70 other titles that I hated. And eventually we went back to uncomfortable either way. And then we found that tagline, why choosing easy is making your life hard. And now all of a sudden everybody loves it.
Yeah, dude,
So I'm glad I fought for it.
it makes so much sense. And when you read it, first thing that came to mind for me is like pick your heart. Like pick your heart. It's gonna be hard either way, but pick your heart, whether it's staying hard with the discomfort you're in now and probably maybe the issues that come later. Again, I'm thinking from a weight loss, fat loss, health perspective. It's like, all right, we can invest in yourself now, or there's going to be a price to pay down the line, or we can deal with the hard now and life gets a little bit better down the line. So I love that. Give me, we'll get into some details of the book, but kind of give me like even more of like a brief outlook of what to expect from this book.
Yeah, you're going to get some personal stories. You're going to kind of understand a little bit more about how I got to where I am now and why I think the way I think. And there were a couple of moments when I was 16 that really kind of shaped the way I think, the way I view the world. Some hard moments that really kind of taught me really uncomfortable lessons early on that I now realize are some of the greatest advantages that I feel like I have. So that's kind of where we start, and then it's really I go through 21 strategies, and there's strategies where I wanted to write one of my favorite books of all times is Atomic Habits. If you haven't
Yep.
read that by James Clear, great book, highly recommend for your audience. But I wanted to write a book now that's one of the greatest books of all time. So like a high bar, Brett. But
Guess
I
that high bars,
also
baby.
but I also love that book because I could read that book today and apply it to all, the things that are going on in my life right now. And I could also read the book at the end of the year and my life could be in a different spot and all of the same habits and, things that I need could be different.
Mhm.
I tried to write this book in a way where you can read the book and it's going to be important for you now. And if you read it again in 6 months, you could even flip open to a certain chapter that you may need to read again and still be able to apply that. Now, I'm a coach first, even though now I'm a speaker and I do some other things. But at the end of every chapter, there are two action items. One that you can do that will take you less than a minute that you should do before you turn the page. And the second one is one that you can do in the next 24 hours. So this whole book is about building momentum, and it's about how can we take these little action items and expand our comfort zone a little bit throughout each chapter, so that by the time you get to the book, it's not great. I read this self-help book, this personal growth book, and now I have, what do I do, or how do I put it all into action? By the time you get to the book, if you've again, I tried to make it as like low hanging as possible, like super simple. But if you've done those things, you've now done 40 steps of action, and you're going to feel momentum by the time the book's even done.
Absolutely. And it reminds me of a quote my high school baseball coach used to always say, and I've just applied to my life, is small things lead to big things. And again, if I think from the listener's perspective, where with weight loss, everyone wants to lose 30 pounds in 30 days, which is like if you can do that, great. But as the data shows, it's more likely to come back than not. But I always say to them, what if we just lost a pound a week? 1 pound a week. Like, doesn't seem that crazy. Obviously, it still allows flexibility. Yes, there's things we need to change and improve upon and grow on. But if you think from a big picture, that's 52 pounds a year, 104 pounds in 2 years. Think about how life would be different a year or 2 years from now. I mean, think about your life 3 years ago. You're in San Diego. Now
Yeah.
look, you're an author. You're a married man living in Florida. You're about to be a pop. Like look how much your life can change and look how much more life you have to live now, but in a way that's there's probably a lot more ingrained into you that's a little bit more second nature that I always like to say we just go live happily ever after. Now we're always trying to grow, improve, and do all those things, but at least in certain aspects of our life. But anyways, I love that. Now, kind of getting more into the book, you said discomfort is the path, not the problem. Talk to me a little bit about that.
Yeah, some of this is, I'm 38 years old, so some of this is, I'm in that rare small window where I know, I grew up without social media, without life, without Uber Eats, without Netflix, all those things. And like now I've also seen like the crazy boom of technology and
Hmm.
ChatGPT and all these things. So I do feel that life is, and by no means am I trying to make a blanket statement like everybody's life is easy. No, but we have to now, we sit more than we ever have.
Hmm.
We can Uber Eats all of our food. We don't have to cook a thing anymore. We don't even have to go get in our car to go pick it up. Like
Yeah.
it will show up at your door
Yeah.
cooked for you. So I think there's a lot of great things that life has gotten easier. But I believe that now more than ever, we have to seek out discomfort. We have to
Hmm.
seek out ways to grow, not just physically, but grow mentally, to grow spiritually, to grow all of these things. We need to find those discomforts. And the people that find those discomforts or seek them out, that's really where the growth is. That's where you get challenged and then you build the skills. That's where you fall down and you learn how to get back up. So it's this thing where, a lot of times when I find in an audience, I'll ask everybody, like, who here is growth minded? And every hand will go up. And
Hmm.
then I'll say, okay, explain to me, three things that you've done this year to specifically force yourself to grow. And people can't name them.
Yeah.
So it's like we all say we're growth minded, but we think that we're going to grow just because another year goes by. Sorry, you're a year older, but that doesn't necessarily mean that we've grown.
Hmm.
So this book is really encouraging people to use a phrase that I like to call, like, instead of getting out of our comfort zone, I like to say expand your comfort zone.
Yeah.
Let's grow the circle of what is comfortable for us because we've tried something new, because we've put ourselves in a situation where we've had to learn new skills, learn a different mindset. I think you know what it's like to move across the country.
Yeah.
Nothing challenges you and makes you a different person, and also completely changes your perspective. I
Hmm.
love that I spent some time in these different areas because, and I would highly recommend any of your young listeners, you can always move back home. And
Yeah.
I say that like I would love to make it almost mandatory for every like late teen, young 20-year-old to have to move to a new city and just adapt. Just make new friends, learn
Yeah.
a new job, find a new, yourself in a new area where you have to find the grocery store and learn the things. That's why, we could go off on a tangent on college, but like college, whether you love it or hate it, everybody should have to go away to
Yeah.
college. That is where the value is from a personal growth standpoint.
Absolutely. And there's so much to learn from traveling, like you were saying. And for us, it was always a funny experience. I don't know if I've ever told this on the podcast, but we moved 10 days, like we did a road trip across the country. And we were actually in downtown San Diego. And we pull up in downtown, and people mention, like, oh, there's homeless downtown. Like, just beware. We're like, oh, like from Boston, like, there's homeless in Boston. Like, not a big deal. They're just around. But I didn't know to what extent. So we pulled in. First thing we see is a dude taking a dump with his pants by his ankles just on the side of the street. And then there was just a whole village of homeless, which again, you feel bad and all that stuff. But the reality is there's a little discomfort there with my wife knowing she'll be walking around doing all these things. So we moved to that place and we eventually broke that lease with pretty quickly and moved obviously to the location we are now. But when after 10 days of that travel, and then that's what you show up to, and you're like, this isn't the dream that was in our head, where we could easily just go back and all these things. Not that I say it was easily, but now we shifted, we made choices, all those things. Life is incredible at this point. The things I've done, the things I've learned, the people I've met, I 1,000% agree with you where I'm not going to force my kid to do anything, but I'm really going to encourage them to just go. Like pick a spot on the map, spin the globe, put your finger down, go live somewhere else, experience. And the same thing like you just said, because I remember when we moved, I don't know if this happened with you, but when we moved, there's voices that are supportive, but there are voices that are like, why? Like, why are you doing this? Especially at our life, we just got married. Like, you expect to settle down, have kids, and there's do that whole kit and caboodle. And we were, well, we can do that, but let's go try something real quick. And if we hate it, and if it is miserable after a year or two, we'll come back and everything will be the same and it's all good.
Yeah, the worst case scenario for a lot of things are not actually as bad as we think. That's
Yeah.
the only reason, that is the only reason that I ended up stepping away from the gym that I was at the time was I actually like thoroughly walked through the worst case scenario. And I was probably a little young and maybe a little like cocky at the time, but I was like I can walk into any gym in America and be their best trainer within probably a month or two.
Yeah.
And that's just how I felt. So that's why I said, well, what's the worst case scenario? The worst case scenario is I walk back into a gym and in a couple months I work my way back up to a role
Hmm.
that feels good, right? Like that's where I could find clients. I know how to speak to clients. I know how to book clients. I'm a really good trainer. I could do all that. And that was like, so the worst case scenario is actually kind of what I'm living most days.
Yeah.
So you can change a lot of things. There are a couple of things that you can't,
Yeah.
but just I think moving is a great is a great one that every young person should go through, and even some people who maybe are still in their hometown.
Yeah.
It's never too late to kind of put yourself in that situation. But to your original question, we have to seek out those uncomfortable experiences because that is really where the growth is. And also, it's I don't just want to say like grow, 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 grow. It's also where the most fun and exciting times of our life
Yeah.
are hidden. And at the very end of the book, I talk about this acronym for best life. And I know like hashtag best life like makes people want to gag, but it really like if you think back, if I say like Kevin, what was like the most exhilarating experience this past this in the last 6 months, or what was the time you were the most scared, or the time you laughed the hardest? All those moments are usually found in some sort of uncomfortable, situation where all the story, like when I think back on a year and I think back like the best moments of the year, they all have one of these, what is it, eight characteristics, whether it's like laughter, fear, tears, whether it was like exhilaration, empathy, like they all have these things. So that acronym will be really helpful if somebody's like, how do I create more memories and experiences in my life? That last chapter is really going to help you.
Cool. Cool. I can't wait to get into it. But even still speaking on this topic of like finding discomfort, is there any suggestions on like how we would rewire our brains to stop avoiding it and actually lean into it?
Great question. Yeah, finding the areas that you do want to improve in your life. And even funny enough, when you were talking about let's go back to what you said in the beginning of like when we were looking for friends, right?
Yeah.
We're like across the country, like fit guys, but like starting our business and like sometimes starting your own business can be kind of lonely, right? We're
Mm,
behind a computer and we're working with clients, but like we don't have a team and we don't have
right.
a huge company to walk into. So let's put that for instance, and when people think of discomfort, sometimes they think of physical pain. No, I'm talking about just putting yourself in an uncomfortable situation, like sliding into somebody's DMs and saying, "Hey,
Hey.
bro, you want to get a coffee?" Like that can be really uncomfortable. But look at this. Like years later, we're across the country from each other, hooking up for a podcast, having like still staying in contact with each other, rooting each other on, all
Yeah.
because of one DM and one contact and one coffee. Meeting friends is another one. It's just and going up, talking to a stranger. I know that there's 100 dating apps, and like I know that they've been very effective for people,
Mhm.
but it's gotten to the point where it's gotten so easy to swipe now that you see somebody across the coffee shop or across the mall, and they're incredibly attractive, and you're like, man, I really like that person. I'll just go home and swipe.
Yeah.
Like that's putting yourself in a situation where you might have missed out on a really great natural connection because of some of the conveniences and honestly some of the complacency that we've just been spoon fed now.
Yeah. I love it. And one thing I know you do, which I stole from you, there's a lot of things I've stolen from you, by the
I
way,
love it.
but for someone which might not show to be funny on social media or even podcasts and talking to individuals, but whenever I meet someone new or I'm in a group of people, I'm very shy. I'm very like social anxiety, like there's a lot going on. And one thing I knew you did is you'd go on a walk in the morning and just say hello to every individual you walk by. And I start doing that. And as simple like good morning, hello, nothing crazy, but it takes a bit. There's discomfort there, right? I'd come back to my apartment to start working, and my mood is a 10 out of 10. I can take on anything at this point. So it's just like something like that, whether it's working out in the morning as well. These discomforts can really set the tone, but also like help with so much growth when you do lean into them and set yourself up with them.
That is such a phenomenal example. And I remember, I think one day was on a jog or something, and I put up my stats at the end of the day, and I was like, I said hello to 25 people. 15 people ignored me completely. Three of them looked disgusted, and then four said, "Hey, like, hey, how you doing? Great
Yeah.
day." And that's what it's doing is it's training you to not let somebody else's energy impact yours.
Yeah.
You can be the one who sets the tone. And what I love about that, like simple exercise of get out of the house and say hi to a
Yeah.
couple of people. And I know when I'm in a really good mood with how, not how talk, because at the gym that I go to, I'm not one of those like go there and see, how long I can talk and how little machines I can do. It's like
Yeah.
I try to go and really do things. But like when I walk in and I scan and I have my head down and I don't say hi to anybody, usually like I'm either trying to work something out or I'm not in maybe the best headspace and I need to, I'm going to the gym to change the headspace when I
Yeah.
walk out. But when I am like giving fist bumps to strangers, or there was a guy today working out with me, clearly has a long way to go on his fitness journey, but that like I see that guy working really hard. And I was on the cable machine next to him, and he was working with a trainer and doing like a really cool like rotational cable twist.
Hmm.
And just like I had this thought of I should say something to this guy. I see him all the time, but I was
Yeah.
also like, he's working with a trainer. He's got like he doesn't want to hear from me. But I was like, that's one of those little moments where that is a win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win situation.
Yeah.
And I said, hey man, like I see you working really hard, and I trust me, I needed it today. Like I really appreciate you working hard. And his face lit up, and he was like, dude, thank you, man. Like I see you too. Like those are the kind of situations that are not just like I said, win-win situations, but they are a small piece of discomfort that gives you a massive reward. And the
Yeah.
reward is maybe I made that guy's day. It made me feel really good walking out. And guess what I want to do more of? I
Mm.
now want to say more things to more people and give more compliments. And he might want to do the same thing because of how good it felt for him. So small, but the ripple effect of that kind of stuff can change lives.
Yeah, I love that. And there's just one more point I want to share with the listeners. For me in particular, when change is happening and you're stuck in a discomfort of a moment, you're uncomfortable. Now, whether it's, you're trying to stop drinking and then you're in a social setting and that's uncomfortable, or you're trying to talk to individuals, whatever it may be. In those moments, the way I view it now is two things. One, we're just this small little ant on a floating rock in this universe. It just downplays it. No one's going to remember me for this one moment, like the reality of it. Like, so if you say something embarrassing, it is what it is, but who cares at the end of the day? We're all dying one day. So that's one maybe unhealthy way to think about it. But, anyways, but when I'm in those moments now, I actually pause and become present for a second. And I say, hey, this is actually a beautiful thing. I'm in a moment of growth right now because I can feel that. So it's like you feel that discomfort. You can almost self reflect on it and be like, I'm uncomfortable. This is actually a moment to grow. This is incredible. So even though that discomfort's still there, you actually look at it as a positive, beautiful thing versus something to avoid. So that's just for the listeners, as something that personally helps me. It's just pausing for a moment, being present for a moment, and just reflecting to myself, look, this is a moment to grow. Let's take advantage of this opportunity.
I love that. I love that. One thing you there's a lot of things in life you can multitask. The one thing you cannot multitask is being present.
Yeah.
And when you are able to find moments of being present, you realize how the better decisions you're able to make in that. And you the way you phrased it was perfectly of like your adversity that you're facing right now will become an advantage
Mhm.
if you work through it, right? You got to get through it. The adversity is now. The advantage is on the other side of that adversity. And that to me is like now looking back and seeing all of the advantages that I have now because of adversity. When you are present enough to be aware that those things gave me what I have now or gave me some sort of benefit there, when you're in it, you can't always see the advantage, but you can be aware enough to say, like, this sucks right now. This is not fun. I can't believe that thing happened, or I can't believe I'm going through this. Or, I remember when we were going back and forth with the book, and I was like, how many times are we going to edit this thing? Like, we're on edit 45. Like, is there ever a book at the end of this Yellow Brick Road? But I just kept saying, man, like I know that there's like I'm going to be so proud when I open up that box of books the very first day and I get to look at it and I'm going to say like, man, all this, all this adversity was worth it. So
I love that. Absolutely. Now, I want to shift things a little bit more into the side of motivation, the big topic out there. So, you talk about the myth of motivation versus the power of momentum. Talk to me a little bit more about that.
Yeah, I used to be when I first just started kind of working for myself. I actually had these sweatshirts made up, and they said motivated. You probably saw them. I probably would wear them still all the time. I still have a couple because I was the motivated guy. Literally, my Instagram handle was motivated by Brett. It is now just my name. But it was because I wanted to be like this motivational figure, right? I wanted to motivate the world, and I wanted to do this thing. And what's funny is sometimes I'll stand on, on stage or in front of a group of people, and I'll say, "I'm the worst motivational speaker you're ever going to hear." And they're like, "Well, why did we hire you?" And I'll say, hold on, but I'm the best momentum speaker you've ever heard because that's my goal is to have you leave with momentum." And everybody's like, "Okay." The
Thank
person who
God.
hired me is having a panic attack in the corner.
What did we spend this money on?
Yeah, what are we doing? Get this guy. But I just think that momentum is so much more tangible, and
Mhm.
it gives you the control back. Motivation feels like this thing, and I'm gonna give your crew another quote here is don't ask yourself questions that you don't want the answer to. When you wake up in the morning, don't ask yourself like, do I feel like working out today? That's a question that is a 50-50 coin flip on whether you follow through with the thing that you know is going to make you feel better when you're done.
Mhm.
Don't ask yourself that question. Ask yourself, like a better question would be like, how much time do I have for my workout this morning? Or ask yourself, like, hey, do I want to do like chest or like, is my back feeling too sore? Should I switch to shoulders? Like that, those are all productive questions that are going to get you a productive answer.
Mhm.
Don't ask yourself, like, do I feel motivated today? To me, that's a question that is like, no, I don't feel motivated. So now what? So now you bail on your day, you go back to bed, you wake up in a week when you're like, that's a bad question. Instead, a better question is, how do I build momentum today? And if that's how you start most days, you'll get really clear on what is important and what is not. It'll also help you prioritize what things are going to you should do and what things you should do probably immediately. If I say what's going to help me build momentum today, guess what the answer is? Never. Never skip the gym. Now I have
Mhm.
rest days, I have recovery days, I have off days. I'm not saying 7 out of 7 is the right way to do it, but I do believe that when you say what will help me build momentum, there is a no BS answer to like backing out of the commitments that you made to yourself. So to me, momentum is just always in the control, and you're always one good decision away from being back on the right side of momentum. It feels just like a low hanging opportunity to be like, I can win that.
Yeah, absolutely. And what it does too is it still keeps the end of the day, like the outcome, the same, right? If the goal is to work out, you're not like now taking that option as far as, hey, I had to plan to work out today. Do I feel like working out today? It's like, all right, now we can lose the day because the plan is now off. Versus, all right, I'm still working out today. The question just might be, am I going to do chest or back or legs or like whatever it may be, walk, whatever it may be. So it's just shifting for the outcome to still be the same, or at least again, growing you to grow, pushing you to grow, excuse me, versus giving yourself an opportunity to get out
Yeah.
of it. Why is it such a trap when we talk about waiting for motivation, and how do we shift to momentum instead? Like, how do we actually make that shift? I know you talked about like asking the question and shifting that question, but is there anything else there?
Yeah, I would say momentum is action based.
Yeah.
We can't build momentum by thinking, and we can't really build momentum by waiting.
Hmm.
Waiting for motivation is like the kiss of death. But momentum is one of those things where if you think of like even a pendulum, right? Just like a
Hmm.
pendulum or a clock that like needs all it takes is one little flick, and now all of a sudden this thing is rocking back and forth. So same thing with like a snowball rolling down a hill. It just takes a little bit of a nudge. So I like momentum because one you realize that the ripple effect or like throwing a stone into the water and all of a sudden you see like the momentum and the ripple effect of that movement, it just makes it bite size enough that I like that game, and we like to play games that we think we can win. And if
Yeah.
it's like, well, how do I get motivated? That feels like I don't necessarily know how to always motivate myself, but I know how to build momentum.
Yeah.
And what happens when I build momentum? I feel more motivated.
Yeah.
So to me, it's like start with the bite size, and momentum for a lot of people does feel bite size. And then, of course, we can go deeper and deeper and deeper on like how do we actually build the momentum in what area. But yeah, like for, again, you momentum, you had to have a first podcast. You
Yeah.
had to have a first show. You had to have a first guest. Like, well, I'll do it when I'm motivated. Or you'll be more motivated by episode 12,
Yeah.
right? Like that's how you start to build that.
Yeah. And the funny thing, so one of my biggest goals for this year was to actually start the podcast. I always make the joke this was a 2-year work in progress. It was on me to start it. I just never did because I'm human, got in my own head, imposter syndrome, all those things. But then 2025, I said, fuck it. I'm going to create 52 podcasts this year. One a week is the goal. And even in my first podcast, I was like, this is gonna suck, guys. Like, this is my first one. I don't really care. But the goal over time is to have it suck less and, stick around to be part of this journey with me and get some good insight on health and fitness. But it just takes that one action because that one action, the cycle leads to some results, which does lead to motivation, which does lead to more action and so on and so forth. And you just continue that cycle and cycle. And I love the word momentum. I actually use that a lot in my coaching. So there'll be individuals who, constantly want to be in a fat loss phase, 365 days a year, which I love that. Like, I love that drive, love that passion. But the reality is, again, as data tells us, after 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, we burn out and then we just go back to doing things the way we were doing them. So I have a momentum phase. It's like a maintenance phase, but I call it a momentum phase because it's like, hey, we just crushed it for 3 months. You're down 20 pounds in 3 months. This is great. We're not stopping doing things, we're maintaining things. And we might build some progress in other areas. Like, hey, let's set more specific gym goals, weightlifting goals, cardio goals, whatever it may be. But I just want to maintain our weight right now. So we can have a little bit of flexibility right now. We'll take, a little bit from this bucket, add it in this bucket. And then in a month or two down the line, we're going to have so much momentum that you're going to lose another 20 pounds in the next 3 months after that, versus eventually burning out because that's what happens if we don't allow us to have some relaxing time. And I don't want to say relax where we're like sitting on the couch, but I'll dial it back, like step off the gas a little bit. Like it's a marathon, not a sprint type idea. So I love the saying of building momentum, just in all these cases.
Yeah, momentum is a much better word. And really, if people were to focus more on momentum, I think they would
Yeah.
build a more sustainable progress.
For sure, for sure. So now let's shift out to confidence. Confidence isn't a trait, it's earned through reps. Talk to me about that.
Yeah, repetition. So in the book, I talk about confidence criminals, and this is the thing that stopped most people from embracing the uncomfortable, making the change that they want to. It's this like the voices in our head that talk us down from staying comfortable, staying complacent, and keep us stuck. And the confidence criminals are limiting beliefs, imposter syndrome, and perfectionism. So those three are, and I break them down in the book of the things that stop people. Now, how do we overcome them? I'm going to kind of give you guys the bonus chapter here of the core four. The core four when it comes to confidence. And the first one you just mentioned is repetition. Anything that you get reps in, you will get better at. So I challenge people on both sides of this when it comes to whatever you're doing currently, you're getting better at. Right now, we're both on a podcast. You're doing one a week. You're getting better every week,
Hmm.
right? Now, if you are again, we all love a good binge session, but like if we're doing that every night, guess what we're getting better at? We're getting better at spending our nights, binging TV, right? Or binging something, like whatever it may be. So just think about that when it's like whatever we're doing, we're getting better at. The second one is preparation. And, before this podcast, just so you guys know, Kevin and I were going back and forth of like, Kevin wanted to make sure he highlighted the book, which I really appreciate. And I wanted to make sure like, hey, how do I understand your audience and give them the best possible content we can? Because of that little bit of preparation, we both came on, we're like, this was going to be awesome anyway.
Yeah.
We were like, hey, let's, I really want this to be, I want this to be good. I want you to get off being like, hey, that was excellent for my audience. Little bit of preparation gives us both confidence that this is going to be an excellent episode. We're both
Hmm.
prepared. And now we can get ourselves going there. The third one is courage. And courage to where sometimes you're going to have to do it scared. Sometimes you're going to have to do it where you don't have all the answers. Sometimes you're going to have to walk into a room and be like, this is going to be so uncomfortable. But I always like to reference it as how long is the uncomfortable phase for how long the reward is going to last, right? Like going up to meet somebody or like sliding into a DM took maybe 10 seconds, but the reward was like 4 years of a friendship,
Sure.
right? Think about that when it comes to this is a small moment of discomfort, but so many small moments of discomfort actually have ridiculously big ROIs. But people will never give themselves the chance at the big ROI because they're afraid of this momentarily moment of comfort, getting turned down, getting rejected, going for an interview and not getting picked. Singing in front of a crowd and realizing, not everybody loved you. Man, I speak in front of audiences all the time. I know that not everybody in that crowd likes me, but I can't get everybody to like me. I'm trying to get the people who need this message, and I'm trying to get as many of them who are locked in and focused and eye contact, taking notes. That's the person I'm focused on. And the last one is authenticity. And this is why I am a big advocate against the fake it till you make it method.
Mm-hmm.
Because when you fake it till you make it, what you're doing is you're actually admitting that you don't have confidence in this area. So because of that, I'm going to fake it. The problem with that is with authenticity, people can read right through that BS. And when you're faking it, you're actually know that you're BSing yourself, right? I forget that we can curse on this. So you're bullshitting yourself, right?
Fuck you.
Yeah, you're bullshitting yourself. So you know that when it comes to the confidence. So what happens is that is not your most authentic version of yourself. What would happen is, and I talk people, and what's funny enough, Kevin, I'll give you everybody an example. When I speak, if I am in a smaller room where maybe there's no slides or technology, and I always have a marker board and I'm always, drawing stuff.
Yeah.
I would tell people right up front. I was like, hey, everybody, I am two of my, underlining fears are I am a terrible smeller and I really hate doing math in public. So if I do some side of math or I go to write on that board, there's a good chance I'm going to spell something wrong. That wasn't always my kind of intro, but I say that when I get to the board because I'm setting everybody up to being like, guess what Brett's probably going to do at some point? I'm probably going to spell something wrong. And when I do, they're going to be like, he did it. I guess what? But you know what gives me confidence and makes me feel more authentic is not trying to impress you with my spelling. Yeah. I'm putting it out there. I am not going to impress you with how good of a speller I am, mm-hmm. but I am going to hopefully impress you with the authenticity that I have around the message that I'm delivering. Mm-hmm. So that's where, those three things, repetition, preparation, having some courage, and then being authentic is really what confidence is, where it's built. And it will give you your best opportunity to fight against those confidence criminals.
Absolutely. Excuse me. And there's 2 points I want to not add to it, but mention is talking about preparation. So again, more of a personal example is I was doing this course once. It's like one of those self-growth, personal development courses. And it was talking about more behind some what brings up discomfort for you? What are you working through? What are those inner demons is what he called it. And I'm like, all right, so there's anxiety around this and this and that. Doing a podcast, I always get a little nervous before starting a podcast. Even with you, someone I know, it's I just want this to be really good. I don't want to embarrass myself. So I have a big fear of embarrassment. That's why I get social anxiety with people. I don't want to embarrass myself. There's some history there from childhood, but we won't get into that. But the way they talk about it is all right, preparation is for me something that is actually my inner demon is actually telling me. It's oh, when you get so much anxiety and you're so overwhelmed, it's because you're not prepared. You don't have anything prepped up. So if I came into this podcast winging it, you're damn right, it'd be a shitty podcast. It would probably not flow the way I want it to. I'd be super unprepared. I'd be nervous. I'd be stuttering, all these things. But preparation takes that voice and quiets it down. It's still there. And the way I always describe it, it's just a voice really trying to protect me. So instead of fighting against it, listen to what it's saying. So that was just the example I had from a preparation standpoint. And the fake it till you make it, I like a lot. Because this is, again, it's sort of a personal thing I'm going through right now is an identity shift. It's showing up as the person, as the man I'm going to be in 5-10 years from now. I'm trying to be that today. And the byproduct ends up, I'm eventually that man. But I still have to be that person today, right? I have to identify as that person and what they're doing. It's hey, that person works out every morning. All right, so I'm going to work out that morning. I'm already doing those things, for example. So I love all of that. Now, another section from your book talks about progress doesn't always feel good in the moment. What does that mean?
Yeah, that's where a lot of times it becomes mundane. And to be great at anything, you have to do something a lot of times. What's the quote? 10,000 hours, right? Or 100,000, 10,000 hours. Yeah. What a lot of people don't realize with that 10,000 hours is where the biggest growth increase, where the hockey stick is on the chart of how much growth it is. And it's in the first 20. It's
Hmm.
in the first 20 hours. And a lot of times people won't become an expert necessarily at something, but anything that they want to get better at, I always encourage them get those first 20 hours in as fast as possible. Think about somebody who spreads those 20 workouts, let's do workouts for instance.
Hmm.
Somebody who spreads the 20 workouts in over a year, right? 20 workouts in a year is not going to give you very much. What if somebody got 20 workouts in a month?
Hmm.
20 hours worth of workouts in a month. That person is significantly not just more confident, but probably feels like they have a better handle on things, and also is probably already seeing progress with 20 workouts in a month just because of how much they've put in. They now know where their favorite treadmill is. They now know how to use the machines. They now know what a leg day looks like in a chest. They just think about like the repetition on that. So for anybody out there who's lacking confidence, I think it's reps, but I would also encourage you get as many reps in as quickly as possible. Don't say like, oh, you doing once a week for a podcast is a high level of reps. Somebody would be like, oh, I'll do 5 shows this year. 3 months later, you're not going to feel any more confident than you did when you did your first episode 3 months ago.
Right.
So getting those reps in. But the progress of it that people don't always understand is that to make progress, you have to do it when it's no longer fun.
Hmm.
Now, how do we make it fun? You can make it fun by bringing new energy to it, by changing it a little bit. But, like if you want to learn how to play the piano or you want to learn how to eat better, like sometimes you just have to do it long enough. And then what happens is the results that you're getting become where the fun is.
Hmm.
The repetition showing up every day may not be as fun, but sometimes when you get to the end, it's like, hey, then this is really where more of the fun is. So it's not always going to be as sexy as people think. And one of my lines is expect it to be hard. If
Yeah.
you expect it to be hard, when it gets hard, you're prepared and you're understanding, oh, okay, this is that point that they were talking about. This is where, remember when we ran the San Diego half marathon?
Yep.
And it was my first half marathon, and I was asking everybody like, where is this going to come where it starts
Mm.
to get really hard? And people were like mile like 8 or 9,
Yeah.
like, and I remember it getting there, but because I had asked everybody, I was like, oh, this is what they're talking about. Like
Yeah.
those water stations are feeling really far between now.
Yeah.
Legs are getting heavy, but like I don't want to stop because I've kept this pace for so long. But being prepared for that, all of a sudden it happens, and you're not shocked. You're
Hmm.
like, this is what I was preparing for. This is what I put the plan in for. This is why I asked all those people like their advice on what to do when I get to this moment. That's all of a sudden you get to that progress point and you're like, hey, I'm prepared for hard. But if you just only plan for easy, you're gonna get smacked in the face by hard, and that's when most people quit.
Yeah, for sure. Especially the half marathon. You get to mile 8, 9, or 10, and you're like, all right, you find a person, talk about making it fun. All right, catch that person. Like you start making the
Yeah,
game out of it. Like, let's go play tag.
yeah.
Um, I wanted to mention this earlier. I just forgot. That's why you see me writing stuff down now. But again, a great lesson you taught me, because I know you've had a great journey and transformation with drinking alcohol, and that's been a journey of mine over the last 2-ish years, I'd say 2 or 3 years, because just realizing this is an added value to my life, it's taken away. Especially you run a business, like when you're hungover for 3 days, 4 days at this point now at our age, you're just realizing I'm taking away from my clientele, my business, the people, and even in my life, not even business related, showing but as a husband, is getting damaged because I like to party on the weekends. It ruins, more than half of my week. And I remember going out with you one of our first time, and we were talking about it and sharing with you how I really wanted to make a change on it. And this maybe even goes back to the discomfort section, but you mentioned like, hey, it's gonna suck the first time. Like you're gonna hate it. But every time after that, we'll just suck a little bit less and a little bit less and a little bit less. And that's a quote I use today in still today in my coaching. But it's just like anything, like you're gonna suck at it or it's going to suck the first time, but it's only gonna get better. And that's gonna feel so rewarding itself, just knowing you got 1% better each time after that, or you felt 1% more comfortable each time after that. So I love that saying from you. It sucks now, but it's gonna suck less later.
I love that you brought up that example, and we could expand that into all of discomfort. Is
Yeah.
discomfort is early on when you haven't faced any discomfort or you've been complacent or been trying to stay comfortable for so long. Discomfort's going to feel big. It's going to feel like this massive boulder of tsunami of discomfort. But then all of a sudden you start doing it a little bit more and it kind of just becomes a little bit of your way of life because you're saying, okay, this discomfort, it's a little bit more normalized now because I know that it comes with rewards. And if I'm a growth-minded individual, well, that I need this, right? It becomes kind of a necessary factor for the things that you want to accomplish. Drinking is a great example there. And I remember when I was talking, I was like, hey man, the a first time you go through like a birthday and you don't drink, or the first time you like New Year's comes around, you're like, okay, I didn't drink at New Year's. Like that, I'm still alive. I still actually had a great time. Like that's not that crazy. Okay, so the
Mhm.
next time like an event comes, okay, St. Patrick's Day. Oh man, I always used to like really, take it to the limit on St. Patrick's Day. And now all of a sudden, like, okay, I can still do that. All of a sudden you're like, okay, there's no day that I have to drink. There's no like absolute must. Okay, wedding.
Right.
Okay, great. It was like still a great time. You start to learn those things. And the same thing I think happens with confidence is like
Yeah.
these things feel like, oh man, they're so like to gain confidence is going to be this big, massive action. It's really not. It's a lot of these little things that stack up that add to really genuine, authentic confidence.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Now, going back to speaking of like progress and doesn't always feel good in the moment. How do we know the difference between like a dip that's normal in the growth process versus, or I guess, in a signal that is something actually needs to change? Like when there's a dip in the growth process versus, all right, we actually need to make a change here.
That's a really great question. I think it depends on the pursuit that we're on. There's
Hmm.
very much, I think you even said like the tortoise and the hare, like the hare would go through like these sprints and then need to rest, right?
Hmm.
Go through sprint, then then like lay
Yeah.
under a tree or rest or whatever the fable was. But that works for a lot of people. So a lot of times that dip is really just a rest and recovery so we can come back even stronger. We just had family in town and we played some volleyball and stuff in the backyard, but like no workouts for like 3 4 days. And of course you're thinking like, oh man, I'm gonna be so out of like I'm gonna and you go back into the gym and your body's like, we are ready to roll because
Yeah.
we spent 4 days of like great rest and we're all recovered and we got in the pool and like, so sometimes that little dip is actually not a dip. It's just like a necessary kind of like ramp back up.
Yeah.
But I think it depends. And this is where the puzzle of the human being is probably the most important factor here.
Hmm.
For some people, doing something 90% of the way is way harder and more challenging for them than just doing something every day.
Hmm.
Doing 100% of something, there's black and white. There's no gray area. And I believe that, when I talk about goals in the book, I lay out the fact that gray area is the killer.
Hmm.
Whenever there is a gray area and you don't have something answered is where our brains are really smart and we can find every loophole under the sun. So
Hmm.
so I prefer to have some black and white things for me. And
Hmm.
now that's not how everybody wants to live. And trust me, there are times where I am more flexible, and there are times when we travel, and I like to be more spontaneous
Hmm.
than I do rigid. But I think figuring out like what are you better at? Are you disciplined enough to do something 85%, or do you just need to do something every day?
Yeah.
Right? You just need to do it every day. Are you disciplined enough to let yourself have those moments where, a week goes by knowing you'll get back on? But for some people, a week is like a year, and now all of a sudden they're completely off the wagon and it's impossible to
Yeah.
get them back on. So some of that comes with practice. Some of that comes with a lot of self-reflection, but that's where, the beauty of a coach coming into play. Like, again, somebody working with you understand how that
Mhm.
person's wired and you can set some of the parameters to help them succeed and know how long that, a little off season or a little all-star break
Yeah.
is fine in the
Yeah.
season, knowing that they'll get right back on track. Where for some people who maybe aren't working with somebody holding them accountable, 2 3 days could turn into 2 3 weeks very quickly.
Yeah, you see that a lot, especially with individuals that are probably listeners, or at least the individuals that I work with. That's why I named the podcast "Eat the Donut" because I'm like, eat the donut and fucking move on in life. Like we don't have to catastrophize it, because the reality is like there'll be moments where that happens. Now, here's an interesting question based off that because for me, I guess more of like a black and white. I can sometimes find to be almost dangerous. But again, I guess it depends on the individual. Because I'll ask individuals, if we're tracking calories, I'm like, do you work better like having one rigid number, or do you need a little bit more of a range? Because mentally, they might be at 2,000 calories, and the moment they hit 2,050 calories, they're like, oh, I ruined all my progress, and they go crazy with it. So I very much understand that and agree with that. But I guess for someone who we give more of a rigid black and white plan to, if they do have a moment of like falling off, is there anything you suggest for them to do, or is there any way you coach them up on that?
That's a phenomenal question because that's where perfectionism comes into play.
Yeah.
A lot of us, and I can't trace back exactly where it is for every person. But for a lot of people, it was school, right?
Mhm.
For a lot of people, maybe you got an A- and you went home and mom or dad was mad that you didn't get an A+. For some people, it was a C and like you worked your butt off, but you
Yeah.
were supposed to get A's. And so some of that's where the perfectionism comes into play of where a lot of people say, if I can't be 100%, I'm going to get a zero,
Hmm.
right? I missed Monday and Tuesday. Oh, well, I'll start on Monday. That perfectionism can sometimes be your biggest crutch. People are like, oh, I'm a perfectionist. That's great, but that also means that you're probably going to have a hard time starting if you can't be perfect, and you're going to have a hard time maintaining if you can't be perfect.
Hmm.
So the same way, like not everybody's meant to do something every day, but let's take like doing something 5 days out of 7.
Yeah.
Where the gray area falls into play for somebody is that a lot of people go into their week not knowing what 4 days or 5 days they're going to choose. And guess what?
Sure.
Now we're left with a lot of gray area, and every single morning is a decision. I
Hmm.
would much rather that person plan the week out, where, hint, hint, there's another part in the book about that. But there is figure out which 5 day, like on Sunday night, figure out which 5 days are your workouts and which 2 days are your rest days. So
Hmm.
you don't have to have that
Yes.
daily battle on how are we going to hit our 80%.
Yeah. Well said. Well said. And I think it even goes back to your point of preparation and clarity, right? We have a roadmap for the week. We know what needs to be getting done. Because the other reality of it is we're making 35,000 plus decisions a day. And if we have to continue to add more tough decisions too, because if we're not making these ahead of time, they're already a heavy decision to make that you end up using a lot of that battery of your discipline and willpower that eventually, whether it's 2 days later, 3 days later, that battery's dead. And now we're trying to wing it, which we know ever rarely works. But when we have that clarity and make those decisions ahead of time, that's I say there's two ways to be more disciplined. It's have a plan, be more clear on what's going on, and which is making the decisions before you have to make them, just already make them ahead of time. And then obviously like environmental setup's huge as well. But I like how you said that as far as just being very clear and being prepared as far as all right, we have 5 days. These are the days we're working out. I'm doing, full body this day, upper body that day, lower body that day, cardio this day, abs the next day. I'm resting and getting 10,000 steps on this day. Like it's all mapped out for you. And now you're clear, you know what needs to get done. So I love that. All right, couple more things here because I know I'm taking a bit of your time, but there is one more section, at least in your book, I want to get into as far as you can't outwork misalignment. Talk to me about that.
Yeah, that's about making sure that we're chasing something that we actually want. And I learned this when I got into high performance coaching, and I didn't realize this at the time, but over the course of this coaching career that I've had, I've started to realize that when people used to come to me, they would often come to me with goals such as, I want to make more money, I want to sell my business, I want to accomplish, XYZ. There were all these
Hmm.
big high performing goals. And what they wanted was a feeling.
Hmm.
They wanted the feeling that they thought would come from getting these, accomplishing more or doing this next level, getting this next thing. But what I have found through honestly some clients hitting this thing that we've chased down for a year, for 2 years, for 12 months, for 6 months, and realizing a lot of their life didn't really change. And for one client, they were like making this big career move, and it was like this thing that they were going to do, and they were going to have this big payday, and it was going to be this epic thing, and they were planning for 3 years for this. And we started working together, and like 6 months later, he did the thing, and like he didn't celebrate at all. And like Monday came around, and like what did his life look like? He was busier, he had more responsibility, he had a bigger to-do list, and he was getting home for dinner with his family and his kids less.
Hmm.
He realized like he was the one that actually like came to the next call being like, I think I like kind of messed up a little bit. And it was devastating for me as his coach, but like we were going after the thing he said he wanted. But it was a great moment in time and actually made me better of a coach, and he's doing phenomenal now.
Yeah.
But it got me to this point of making sure that the success that we are chasing is ours and something that we actually want and know why we want it. A lot of people don't know what their definition of success is. So what they do is they grab onto their whatever they see online, or they grab onto their bosses, or they grab onto their neighbors, or they look at the car that everybody in their neighborhood drives, and that's success. And we don't understand why we want the things that we want. So the number one most important thing that I would want somebody to really focus on is really understand what success means to you. in your life, in your health, in your relationship, and make sure you're chasing something that when you get it, you are so thrilled that it took the time and energy to get it. Because if you don't like yourself along the journey, you're going to hate yourself at the finish line.
I love that. So I'm sorry if I botched this quote here that you said, but it's something along the lines of, am I chasing the right thing or am I trying to win a game I never wanted to play? How do you know that? Like, how do you know if you're chasing the right thing or you're actually not aligned with what you want at the end?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot there, right? There's a lot to kind of go through that process, similar to the five why, but just on a grander scale of like,
Sure.
what do we actually want and what are we going
Yeah.
to go through? But it's that, it's,
Yeah.
somebody once said to me, like, hey, I wanna, make, 20% more, 15% more than I made this year. And I said, great, why? And he was like, well, I want to do, this thing. Okay, great, why? Okay, I want to do this, I want to get this. Why? When we eventually got back to, he wanted to take more vacations with his family. Guess what he didn't need 15% more money to do? Go on more vacations. He just needed the courage to take more time off. He
Yeah.
just needed to actually set the boundaries of, I'm actually just going to go on vacation. I don't need more money. But in his mind, this was some false thing, this false narrative that he told himself. Success is getting more money. And when I get that, then I'll be able to do this thing. And for a lot of people, that, and let me make a bold statement here. Please, I am not telling people not to get promoted. I'm not telling you not to go get more money. I'm not
Mhm.
telling you to go chase your fitness goals, and I'm not telling you to go, chase down the house and car and dream that you want for your life. Just I'm telling you, Tony Robbins says success without fulfillment is the ultimate failure.
Mhm.
And I just truly believe that this day and age we are so consumed with content and things in our face that oftentimes we get distracted on what we actually want and we end up chasing what everybody around us wants, which is a whole nother talk on your environment and how important your
Mhm.
environment is. But I've just seen so many people put the effort and time and energy and sacrifice and all this thing to go chase something down to not feel fulfilled at the end. And to me, that's a tragedy. That is a
Mhm.
huge waste of a part of our life. So again, when we're facing these uncomforts and we're going through and we're building this life that we want, I really hope people understand, like, hey, you got to enjoy the journey because that's what I
Yeah.
mean. Like the finish line is not going to give us all of these feelings that we want. You're not a new person because you stepped on the scale and you finally hit 20-pound weight loss. You're a new person because you've gone through X amount of weeks and months of growth that it took and dedication and discipline. And that's also, Kevin, where confidence isn't at the end, it's in the middle. You gain
Yeah.
the confidence every day you show up and do the thing that you said you were going to do. Every day that you don't want to do it and you show up, that's where confidence is. It's in the everyday. It is not at the end. It's not the finish line.
Yeah. It's beautifully said. And talking on the alignment aspect, I have a mentor who's phenomenal. He does a lot of speaking engagements as well, and he's in the fitness industry. And he does really well for himself, like makes millions of dollars, multimillionaire, all this stuff. And he'll go to events and speak at these events. And he's like, I'm speaking at these events and I make the least amount of money out of everyone here. Like there's hundreds of millions, like billionaires there. He's like, why am I speaking? He's like, because a lot of individuals in this room are so misaligned where, yeah, they make a lot of money, but now their health is at risk. Now their relationship is at risk. So they have all these misalignments where they're actually not truly happy or fulfilled because they were never aligned. So I love that aspect of it. And once I was reading up on that, I was like, oh, this is something I just recently learned.
And
But
also,
and go ahead.
also, also, I want to just quickly mention that you can't also out earn your way to bad health. If you have bad health, you can't fill that cup of your life by just go chasing more money, right? A
Yeah.
lot of people are like, "Oh, I'm struggling here. I don't have this, but I bet you if I make more money, I'll get that feeling and I'll feel proud and confident in myself."
Hmm.
You can't. You can't also fix a bad relationship by, just doing crunches, right? It's like you have to make sure that these different buckets of our life get the attention that they need. And a lot of times people will put all of their eggs into one basket. That's the reason why I'm not happy in my marriage. That's the reason why I'm not fit. That's the reason why I don't have a good relationship with my family and my kids. You are never going to be able to have one bucket so overflowing that it fulfills the other important buckets of your life. So get really clear on the important buckets of your life.
I love that. All right, my last three quick questions here, and then we'll get you out of here. So I know you mentioned talking about 21 strategies to apply throughout the book. Do you have maybe one or two favorite that you really enjoy or think people could even take action that are listening today?
Yeah, for your audience specifically, health, wellness, all those things is I have a saying called, nobody's going to be like, I've never heard that, but it's the never miss a Monday. I know
Yep.
you know that I'm a big never miss a Monday guy, and a lot of people hear that and they think it's like this cute motto, but actually, I would say that that's probably one of the five most impactful pillars of my life. When I finally said that I am now somebody who never misses a Monday, it wasn't just a saying to me, it was an identity. And when
Hmm.
I stepped into the identity of I never miss a Monday, and for everybody to know, it started in fitness. And it actually started because I would tell all my clients who I would see maybe once or twice throughout the week that if you work with Brett, now you never miss a Monday. And what it did is it kind of guaranteed me at least I'd see them in the gym one other day that they were working with me. And it was like kind of my way of keeping them accountable and also making sure that our progress wasn't going down the drain. And all of a sudden, it became a gym wide thing. And all of a sudden, Brett was known as the motivated Monday guy. And then when I started coaching boxing, I taught on Mondays. And guess what? People didn't miss a Monday, right? Never miss a Monday. And it just became this thing that I was like, man, people really rally behind this.
Hmm.
But it was because that they identified with somebody who doesn't miss a Monday.
Hmm.
And this is why I think it was so impactful. Guess what else somebody does if they never miss a Monday? They probably have a better chance of never missing a Tuesday,
Yeah.
right? And to me, it's like goes right back to momentum. Never missing a Monday to me is basically my blank page for making sure that I start every week being who I say I am. So every Monday, there's no snooze button and there's a morning workout. I don't even take calls or do any sort of scheduling on Monday mornings because I want to make sure that I have time for like starting my Monday off for Brett and making sure that I'm doing the things that I need to do. That would be one of them. The second thing is I would probably say is no zero day. And a no zero day is like this is where the perfectionism comes in. And a very important line is that people think that being perfect or having a perfect day will impact them incrementally, where I would challenge them and I would actually say a zero day will impact you more negatively than a perfect day will impact you positively.
Hmm.
And if you can avoid a zero day, meaning like maybe you didn't eat that great today, maybe you skipped your workout, but damn, drink your damn water.
Yeah.
Drink water. Like get your number of ounces, whatever you need to do. And that's not a zero. And now all of a sudden you're back on track the next day. Trying to be perfect, and in the book I give two examples of like the person who just is if they can't be perfect they don't play, and they're like perfect, perfect, zero, 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 perfect, zero, perfect, perfect, perfect,
Mm.
zero, and the person who's like 70, 50, 50, 70, 60, 50, and like the amount of extra progress that the person will make who's getting 50s and 70s because they're not getting any zeros. The
Yeah.
zeros are deadly to most people's progress momentum and honestly confidence because it's like, man, I can't really, yes, I'm getting a couple hundreds, but you're also getting zeros. And, think about that when it comes to, your letter grade at the end of the year.
Yeah. Well said. And even add to that quickly is I find with a lot of my clients, those days that one, our zeros can probably even turn into negatives, to be honest, like with how poorly we can treat ourselves. But it ends up being the days that, yeah, we may have not got 100%, 90%, 80%, but we got 40, 50, 60 that end up being the reason why you made progress and grew. It wasn't the days that were perfect, you crushed the workouts. It's the ones you still showed up. You gave it 60%, which was your 100% for that day. That's what pushed progress for you, not the 100% days. All right, Brett, my last question, then I'll get you out of here is I always ask this to all my people, individuals I interview. Let's say you're walking down the street and for whatever reason, science goes crazy. You walk by your younger self, a little Brett, and you look at him. And what would be one thing, knowing the life he's about to grow up live, but like in that moment, what would be one thing you would say to him?
Man, that is a great question. I would say, I would say it's going to be uncomfortable either way. I would just say that,
Boom.
man, everything that you want is on the other side of the uncomfort that you're avoiding. And the quicker that you just start to embrace it, the quicker you'll become the person that you know you can become.
Dude, that's the perfect way to end it. I love that. That's why I wrote the book. But Brett, man, where can people grab a book? Where can they follow you? Where can they go for like your deeper work?
Yeah, so everything is pretty much Brett Eaton, BretteEaton. BrettEaton.com is my website. You can find the book on Amazon now. Presale is live, so we
Let's
are like
go.
so pumped. The books will arrive September 9th is when they officially are available. But pre-sales, yeah. And then my Instagram, Brett Eaton _ you can pretty much find me there. I put out content daily. Try to put out some great stuff for everybody. So yeah, man, dude, I really appreciate you having me on. This was epic
Yeah,
conversation. It's a
of course.
mom walk and talk for the ages, but I appreciate you having me on, man.
Dude, words can't describe how grateful I am for you, Brett, especially in a world full of crazy influencers and whatnot, to know someone who I know puts out quality information and is truly seeking to help, like with everyone, want to sell whatever they're trying to sell, but someone who really is just seeking to help on a deeper level. And, even writing this book or creating the content or whatever it may be, you just put in such quality information. And like I said, like I love being able to just, again, learn from you on this podcast. So thank you so much for taking the time. I know you're a busy man as well, need to get out of here, but thank you so much for taking the time. I appreciate you, dude. I love you, dude. And I would honestly want to have you on again because I feel like there's so much more to talk about.
I'd be happy to, man. Dude, I'm so proud of your growth, and man, it's been cool to be rooting each other on. Even though we're across the country,
Yeah.
I know we're rooting for each other, man. So this was a lot of fun today. I appreciate you.
Of course, dude. Well, for everyone listening, thank you so much for tuning in. As always, just go eat the damn donut. I believe in you, and we'll talk soon. Cheers.